If you're studying in a city where there is no access to coaching, the chances that you'll crack an entrance examination and get onto one of the decent medical colleges is almost next to nothing. The success rate of a student is 8 times better, studying in a city where there is access to coaching versus a city where there is no access to coaching. First 5 states in terms of performance, by the way, remember. And it is not their mistake that they don't have access to coaching, but it is 0%. Not a single student of these states had any student who got 650 plus, which means these 4 states could not send one single medical graduate over to become an MBBS doctor, though they belong to this nation, but they don't have access to coaching, so they don't get into a medical college. We want to show the data as it stands now so that you understand the importance of coaching versus the importance of schooling education. Hello students, parents, policymakers and academicians. Namaskar. Welcome to Career 360. This possibly is the most important issue that India has to deal with. How important is school education for you people? How important is school education for the students of this country? And would we drive all the students away from the schools to the coaching institutions, because all we're doing is to put in entrance examinations where students can only study further when they pass an entrance examination. It doesn't matter whether you got 100% in your school scores. It doesn't matter whether you're a topper of the state also. But if you don't crack that entrance examination, then you can't study further. Look at Delhi, for example. You can be the state topper of Delhi, but if you don't crack the CUET examination, you don't stand a chance to get into a decent college in this country. And when that is the case, what would students do? What would parents do? The only option that is left for them is to take students away from the schooling system and put them in coaching institutions. They can crack an examination and study further. Is that the path that we want to take? Is this a way that we want to, show to our children, to our students, that we drive them away from schooling education and dump them into coaching institutions? This is an issue that is very important. And recognizing this issue, the government of India has set up a committee. And that committee, I have the papers, the order of the committee out here with me, where this committee has the Secretary of Higher Education, Mr. Dr. Vineet Joshi, the Chairman of CBSE, the Joint Secretary of School Education and Literacy, the representative from IIT Madras, NIT Trichy, IIT Kanpur, NCRT member, the principal of schools from Kendriya Vidyalaya, Navodaya Vidyalaya, and one private school, and the Joint Secretary of Higher Education. All these 9 members, they have been formed to ensure that they understand the dependency of coaching to crack an examination and what can they do to ensure that that dependency comes down or moderated. And the terms of reference are very clear. It says to examine the gaps in the current schooling system that contribute to students' reliance on coaching centers. 2, it examines reasons behind the emergence of dummy schools. The attendance in the schools are dummy. They don't teach anything. It is just for attendance purposes the school is there because the students are in Kota, are in Vijayawada, are in Hyderabad, are in Sikar. But when the exams happen for the CBSE boards, they go back to that school, take the examination, come back and again studying at the coaching institution. And that is what is happening. We call them dummy schools. And the third part of it is to assess the role and impact of formative assessments at school and higher education levels and how their absence affects students' conceptual understanding and preparedness for the competitive examinations. Now, this is a very, very important step the government of India has taken. The reason why I say it's important is, I think at some point in time, we as a nation need to decide how do we make our schooling system important enough in a student's life, or do we just dump them where they actually only know how to crack an examination to get a better score and move on from there. And because of this committee's reading becomes very important. So what did we do at Career 360? What we did was, if you remember in 2024, there was a massive thing that happened when the NEET results came out. The NEET results were mired in a lot of controversies. And because there was a lot of controversy, the Supreme Court stepped in and there was a prolonged hearing for about 2-3 months before the Supreme Court also gave a judgment. But in the process, the Supreme Court ensured that all the documents, every single data point that was there for the NEET 2024 examination was open for public viewing. By the way, such data is never open for public scrutiny, but in 2024 NEET, it became open for public scrutiny. So with that data, we made it an example to understand what is the dependence of coaching, how many students actually go through coaching and what happens, and if you don't go through coaching, what happens. And this data is what we analyze. At Career 360, we are here to help the policymakers, the academicians, the students, the parents, everyone to make their own decisions, but we are only backing it by data. We're not taking you to a conclusion because that's not our intent at this point in time. But for sure, we want to show the data as it stands now so that you understand the importance of coaching versus the importance of schooling education. Let me show you some data at this point in time. What I'm talking to you about NEET would be relevant for any other entrance examination also. All we're showing is we're taking the example of one NEET examination, NEET 2024 especially, because the data was available, and trying to explain how the importance of coaching plays a big role in the success of a student. So in 6 years time, 7 years time, you actually had 50-60% growth in the number of students who are taking the examination. And that is big enough for any one of us, that the growth in students who are taking the entrance examination keeps increasing year on year for most of the examination, but for possibly JEE. If you understand the medical MBBS per se, you only have 1,10,000 seats, but the number of students who qualify to get into those seats is about 12-13 lakh. You expand the pool of students who are eligible to get into thing. So what do you do for that? You keep bringing down the minimum qualifying mark. All of us in school education, in any education that we have, the minimum qualification is about 35-40 marks and goes up to 50 marks in some of the professional examinations. Like if it's CA, it's 50%, right? But for NEET, the qualifying mark is as low as 16%. So in the year 2022, of the total 720 marks, if you get 117 marks, which is 16.25%, you are supposed to be a NEET qualified student. In 2019, it was 18.61%. In 2020, it was 20.42. In 24, it was 22.5 because all the scores were inflated, remember that. And this year in 2025, it's 20%. As I told you, in 2022, it was as low as 117 on 720, which is 16.25%. The reason why they do it is because the fee is so high, 1 crore, 1.5 crore and all, that unless you have more number of people qualifying, all those seats which are charging 1.5 crores and 2 crores would not get filled in. If you only qualify 3 lakh students, then those students would not fill in because these are all meritorious students. They don't have affordability to pay, but they're meritorious. But they want to also ensure that so many students qualify so that some of them can also pay the 1.5 crore, 2 crore fee in private medical colleges, and that is the reason why they keep increasing the number of students who qualify by bringing down the minimum qualifying marks completely. That is the one story that we need to talk about. But more importantly, coming back to the importance of coaching. When we actually looked at the NEET 2024 examination data, the examination was conducted in 566 cities across about 4,500-5,000 centers. Now what we did was we started tracking to understand how many of these 566 cities actually have some coaching institution. So what did we do for that? We tagged the top 25 coaching companies in the country and start looking at where all they have centers. Because remember, if there is a market, these coaching institutions will go there. So we started tracking the top 25 coaching institutions in the country. And we found that of the 566, only in 231 cities, there is one coaching institution that is there where students have access to. So which also means that in 335 cities in this country, students don't have access to any coaching. It is no fault of the student that they're born in that city where they're studying in a school where there is no coaching institution. But it so happens that of the 566, only in 231 you have a coaching institution, and in 335 you don't have any coaching institution. Now, what is the result? When the NEET 2024 results were declared, we started tracking students who got 650 plus marks, which is what gets them a rank of 30,000 plus, which makes them eligible to get into one of the good medical colleges, government medical colleges. And we started, linking them back to whether there is an access to coaching or not. So from the 231 cities, 89% students got 650 plus, and from the 335 where there is no access to coaching whatever, only 13.4% students got 650 plus. So what it means is that 40% of the cities in the country are bagging 87% of the students of the government college seats, and the 60% where there is no access to coaching, about 13.5%. That's a massive, massive difference. The strike rate is 1:7 or 1:8 in that sense. That you have greater chances of qualifying if you're born in a city where there's a coaching institution as compared to where you're studying in a city where there is no access to coaching institution. And this normally plays against the girl child because parents typically don't send their girl children outside the city. So it is unfavorable to girl children. Now we started looking at not just 650 plus, but we said, okay, let us create a 3 broad range: 700 plus, 650 plus, and 600 plus. Now in the 335 cities when there is no access to coaching, only 9% students got 700 plus, 13% students got 650 plus, and 13% students got 600 plus. Whereas in the 231 cities where there is access to coaching, 90.51% students got 700 plus, which means they will definitely get into one of the government medical colleges. And as I said earlier, 86.6% students got 650 plus, and 87% students got 600 plus. Very clearly, if you're studying in a city where there is no access to coaching, the chances that you'll crack an entrance examination and get onto one of the decent medical colleges is almost next to nothing. The success rate of a student is 8 times better, studying in a city where there is access to coaching versus a city where there is no access to coaching. 8 times better, 8 or 9 times better. Now, we also looked at the top 15 states. Of the total 50 plus students that we have in the country, 22% students belong to Rajasthan. 11.23% students belong to Uttar Pradesh. Kerala was 9.39%. Maharashtra was 8.55%, and so on and so forth. Very clearly, you know that these are, coaching hubs, and that is where you actually have greater success rate here. When you keep further going down, the 7 sisters that we have, Ladakh, Mizoram, Nagaland, Lakshadweep, Sikkim, Daman and Diu, Andaman and Nicobar, Arunachal, Meghalaya, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, Manipur, Goa, Tripura, Pondicherry, Himachal, all these states have almost next to nothing because the success rate, the worst 5 states in terms of performance, by the way, remember. And it is not their mistake that they don't have access to coaching, but it is 0%. Not a single student of these states had any student who got 650 plus, which means these 4 states could not send one single medical graduate over to become an MBBS doctor, though they belong to this nation, but they don't have access to coaching, so they don't get into a medical college of their own. So the students who are born here, none of their mistake, mind you, but they can't get into what the country created as great medical colleges because there is no access to coaching. And then we looked at something else. We said, okay, what are the top 15 cities and what are the bottom 15 cities in terms of comparison? The top 15 cities of the 566, remember, 37% of its students got 650 plus, and which means they got into a good medical college. And in the bottom 15 cities, not even just 0.04%. In the top 15 cities, 11,207 students of the 33,000 students who actually got 650 plus marks. So 37% of its students got into a 650 plus kind of a score. And in the bottom 15 cities, just 13 of them, 1-3. So 11,207 versus 1-3. That is the kind of comparison that we're dealing with because of access to coaching and not access to coaching. Then we started looking at what are the cities with the least merit. 57 cities had 0 student who got 650 plus score. 29 cities had only 1 student who got 650 plus score. Just take it, understand what the gravity of the situation. Just 21 students got 650 plus score from 201 cities, and that is a tragedy, a travesty that's bound to be corrected or needs to be corrected, because if this committee cannot help these cities where access to coaching is determining the future, then this committee needs to step in and deal with this whole thing. Then we also started looking at the states and cities and how they're comparing. In the top 30 cities, 15,370 students qualified with 650 plus, and bottom 30 cities, just 60, which means 2 a city. The top 15 states, 28,057 students qualified. And if you look at the bottom 15 states, the top 51 had 28,057, and the bottom 15 states had just 144 students who got 650 plus score. And the total number of students who got 650 plus is 30,265. 30,265. This is a tragedy. This needs to be corrected. There is a desperate need and a call to understand and explain and actually see how the country can deal with these states where, because they are remote parts of the country, there is lack of access to coaching, because of which their children, their citizens are being denied the right to get into a good institution in this country. And mind you, this is not just about NEET. This would replicate itself in every single entrance examination that we have in this country, because access to coaching is determining the success of the citizens and the students of that particular state and the city. And it is not just this. When we looked at the data across the country, in fact, we listed out, if you look at the top 100 rankers of the 2025 NEET examination, 86 of them went through some coaching or the other, but of the 14, about 8 of them went through some kind of online coaching, which essentially means that if you're not going through a coaching institution, there is no chance, or there are very, very little chances that you'll crack an examination. And that needs to be corrected. This committee has its task cut out. The data that we presented is important for them. The data we're talking about is something that they should look at, because I don't think there is any way that we can escape this thing that coaching is determining the success of a student and not the schooling education. How do we bring schooling education back to prominence? How do we ensure that the children are in schools and not in coaching institutions, are in schools and not in some dungeons set up by the coaching institutions. This is very important. This is very critical for the future of this country, for the future of the schooling system of this country, and the future of the growth of our children. Because at this point in time, what we're doing is we are only telling our children how to crack an examination, and there is no learning, there is no societal skills, there is no schooling education, and that needs to stop. I just hope this committee will look at this very, very seriously, look at this data very seriously, and make some corrective measures. I hope this works. Thank you so much. Namaskar.